Okay, so for the sake of our viewers, I think it's appropriate to note as we begin this year, today is the yahrzeit of our dear friend and first yahrzeit of our dear friend and regular attendee of this class and other classes, Mordechai Dod ben Pesach Levi. So we'll dedicate the learning to his neshama. And we hope he has nachas from this shir and from all the other things he's been involved with. Blessings for all of his friends and family. Yeah. Also, for the sake of our viewers, I think I'm going to share, just quickly repeat what we talked about last night a little bit. One of the qualities that we were talking about, we were sitting together, saying l'chaim and sharing. And one of the qualities is the importance of community. This idea that even if Michael personally may have taken issue with the way in which some program was being run or the way a certain class or event is being done, but he showed up because the community is doing it. It's a unique phenomenon, not for a lot of people, there's a lecture being offered, but it doesn't talk to me, so I'm not showing up. He was there because the community is doing an event. The community is doing a community barbecue. He's showing up. Why? Because the community is doing it. Because he's a member of the community, and the community does it. And I shared yesterday that this is reflected in Rambam's laws of Teshuvah, which we are learning on Wednesday and Thursday nights. Rambam there lists another amongst the items of those who lose their share in the world to come. And on the list is someone who separates himself from the community. And as the Rambam explains it, this means it's not a person who does sin per se. He's doing all the mitzvahs. He's doing everything he's supposed to. He's following the letter of the law. But he decides to do it on his own, not with the community, for whatever reason. So we could imagine a person who thinks that the reason why he's staying away from the rest of the community is because he's humble. And says the Rambam, big mistake. He even says if he's going on his own way like any other guy, like a non-Jew. It's like as if he's behaving like a non-Jew. He's doing mitzvahs, how could he be a non-Jew? If he's not doing it with the community, it's a big mistake. And perhaps the reason is, and this is reflected in Michael's life as well, is because the person who only takes for the community that which is convenient to them, he's not serving Hashem. They're serving themselves. And they see all the amenities the community offers as another service to them. And if it's not serving their purpose, I'm interested. Someone who's with the community and part of the community indicates that they're truly serving Hashem. Because even if it's not comfortable, I'm still part of it because this is the community we're part of. This is the duty. Yeah. This is your role in the community. Show up and do it. Like someone mentioning like yesterday, that sometimes it's very hard for Michael to be chazan on Shabbos, but it doesn't matter. A soldier's got to do what a soldier's got to do. The community needs him to be chazan, he's going to be chazan. This is just the way it is. There's a class, he's going to show up. He'll comment afterwards whether he liked it or didn't like it. He's going to show up. It's a very important feature. Something we can learn from. So I think even though we talked about this last night, I think it's important to share for our viewers. That's the integral member of this class and other classes that we do in the MTC. Okay, we are in the Gemara in the middle of describing the process of the meal offering. At the bottom of Yudalad Amud Beis, at the bottom of 14b. So the process we're holding it right now is the fellow brought his meal offering in a gold and silver utensil from home. When he gets there, he puts it into a consecrated vessel, thus sanctifying the very flour itself. Till now, the sanctification was the value of what he brought. Now the actual item themselves become consecrated, having come in contact, having placed into the consecrated vessels, these vessels that belong to the temple. He pours oil, he pours the frankincense, hands it off to the Kohen, and the Kohen then takes it to, in our Mishnah's version, based on the fact that the southern wall of the altar was directly flush with the entrance to the next inner sanctum of the temple, which led to the Holy of Holies. And because the verse tells us we have to present the meal offering to the face of the altar and to the face of God. Face of God means west, which is where the Holy of Holies is. And the face of the altar means south, just the front of the altar. And therefore, to satisfy both, you go to the southwest corner, so that you're still in the west, unless you're not outside of the entrance, you're not outside facing the entrance to the Holy of Holies. At the same time, you still have some southern angle toward the south of the temple. You're still facing the south of the altar. According to another version, where the entire altar is shifted north, making the southern wall of the altar be not flush with the end of the Holy of Holies, but directly straight to the Holy of Holies. So anywhere on the southern wall, you're already facing west as well. Those are two versions. And the last comment the Gemara said was, do not think that you have to take the actual vessel, tilt it upwards so that the actual flour touches the altar. Just putting the vessel there itself is good enough. This is where we left off. So the Gemara continues its analysis of the Mishnaic age text that brought us through this whole process. Namely, the Mishnaic text read, he takes all of the frankincense, the Kohen then takes all the frankincense and moves it to one side of this vessel that has oil, flour, and frankincense. Why does he do that? So that so he should not take the fistful, the kmitza. He shouldn't take a fistful, or that the frankincense shouldn't end up in the fistful. When he takes a fistful to put it into the other vessel, to bring it up to the altar, it's not allowed to include any of the frankincense, just the oil of flour. And it's supporting text to this idea. It says, Kamatz, if he ties the fistful, and in his hand there emerges sirur, a pebble, a gargar melech, or like a kernel of salt, a kurt levina, or any little bit of that frankincense. Apostle, it is forbidden. So the frankincense is not allowed to be taken with that fistful, and therefore before he takes the fistful, he has to move all the frankincense to the side so that he can have some space where he can take that fistful. Okay. So the next step is, he's got to take a fistful from an area of the flour that's been very saturated with the oil. So the oil does come up with the flour, but not the frankincense. So where do we know that it has to be from the area with the oil? As the verse reads, Misalto mishamna. When you take, you got to take from the choicest of the flour, from that which is most saturated with oil. This is the verse. It's hard to translate the verse Misalto mishamna, but literally actually would mean from its flour and from its oil. But the manner of the way in which the verse describes it sounds as if like you got to get like that, a really good fistful of oil and flour. Similarly, another verse, from the grout, from this flour and the oil. So again, the verse indicates that the oil has to come along in this fistful, but not the frankincense. Then the next stage is he takes the Mishnaic age text speaking again. He takes that fistful and he puts it into another consecrated vessel. And there it becomes again sanctified. So the Gemara asks, why go through another process of sanctification? It's already been sanctified. As soon as we said this earlier, as soon as the guy brings his golden and silver bowl with flour and he puts it into the consecrated vessel, at that moment it already comes consecrated. So why does the fact that he has to put it into a different one? Okay, because that has to go to the altar. But why the Mishnaic text read it as such? Then he's got to put it into the other one to make it sanctified again. It's already been sanctified. So says the Gemara that the meal offering has to have parallels with that of the ordinary offering, an animal offering. And therefore, we consider this fistful of flour similar to the blood that is drawn at the moment of the slaughtering of an offering. So over here it's flour coming out, and over here it's blood coming out. It's a similar sort of process. And when it comes to dam, when it comes to the blood, even though the knife that does the slaughtering is itself sanctified. And therefore, there's a sanctification to the animal and even the blood, bitzavar, that's in the neck, behema of the animal. As soon as the knife touches the neck of the animal, already there's a sanctification to that animal, including the blood. But nonetheless, the blood is then caught in a consecrated vessel, giving it another layer of consecration. So we see when it comes to the animal, there's the animal being consecrated, and then there's the extraction being consecrated at another level. So similarly here, Hakanami here too, we don't make this distinction. We keep it parallel. We keep it commensurate with the process of the animal. The animal in totality is consecrated as soon as the knife is there. But then the extraction, the blood, is also kept in the vessel. So likewise here, the entirety of the meal offering has been consecrated because it's been put into a consecrated vessel. But the extraction from the fistful is again consecrated in another vessel. Just like the animal, knife, and then the vessel.
There's something I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
A little off this, but you mentioned slaughtering an animal. Let's say a farmer has 10 kids, okay? They had big families, and they weren't rich. They had a few animals, and at times they had to slaughter the animal to eat. So, what if his knife wasn't that sharp, and he made the slip, but it wasn't good enough?
So to begin with, it's not valid.
It's not valid.
To begin with, you have to make.
He eats it because he doesn't say anything to anybody else.
He carries a serious burden on his shoulders.
Well, what about the people? Are they innocent?
So they're innocent, but there is some sort of cleansing they would have to go through because at the end of the day, they're not kosher. It's happened, unfortunately, where even kosher butchers were found to be selling less than kosher product. Let's put it that way. It's a serious, grievous sin to be taking on the responsibility of somebody else's sin. So why the issue of kosher is a lot about trust. You're trusting the people who are slaughtering, you're trusting the rabbi who says that he's certified. A lot of trust. But at the end of the day, the verse says, Shomer P'sayim Hashem. God guards those. In other words, someone dedicates himself to doing what Hashem wants. God makes sure that nothing comes wrong. And if you followed everything that the law said to do, and it still went wrong, you can't be held accountable because you've done all your due diligence. Nonetheless, a person who feels like he wants to do some sort of deeper cleansing because his body ingested non-kosher food, even if it was by accident, he's not held accountable. That's certainly an admirable thing as well. Just simply because his body ingested such food, even if it was by accident or whatnot. So that's my answer. Okay. So the next part of the process the Gemara continues is malaket this levaynasa. He's got to collect all the frankincense now. The nice now gabav, and now he puts it onto him. So even though he didn't take the frankincense, he does the fistful, but then he collects it and puts it on top of that which he extracted. As the verse reads, he's got to take all the frankincense that's being placed onto the meal offering. The next stage is when he brings it up. This we're quoting the Mishnah now, the Mishnah text from the top of 15a. And he offers it in this consecrated vessel. So there's different versions to exactly what the question is here. We're going to go with Rashi's version, which is Bakli Shardis Maktale. Is it at this point that he does the offering? The Mishnah text is about to tell us that after he puts the frankincense onto that fistful that he extracted and put into the other vessel, after that he's got to put salt and burn it on the fires, which means only then is it offered. So why would the Mishnah now say that he brings it up, offers it, and then it says salt it and burn it? It seems to be out of order. If we were to read the Mishnah off, literally it would be bring it up to the altar, offer it, put salt, burn it. The burning is the offering. So why would you say that when you carry it to the altar, you're offering it? You're not ready to offer it yet. And therefore, says the Gemara Aleim, or rather, read the Mishnah as follows: Maleo b'kli sharis. He brings it up onto the altar, carrying it in this consecrated vessel, the second one, for the purpose of offering. So now it's a different message. Now it seems that the Mishnah is enjoining us to have in mind that when you're bringing it up, you have intent that I'm bringing it up now in order to offer it after it's salted. Okay. And now that it's up there, he now salts it. And he puts it onto the fires. The verse reads, and all of your meal offerings, whatever type it is, the melech, timlech, salted, it shall be salted. Actually, all offerings have salt. There's an interesting backstory to that, right? The famous Medrash, which says that at the time when, on day 2 of creation, when God split the lower waters and the upper waters and the lower waters, that's to say, split spiritualized water versus the lower water, the physicalized water. And the Medrash says that Mayim Tachtonim Boichim, the lower waters were crying, Anan be'inallah b'hevi kamamalka. We want to be near the king. We got sent down here. Not fair. The way Chassidus interprets this complaint, the lower waters are saying, you sent us on a mission here. You're making us physicalized because the ultimate intent is that we should be elevated. But I don't want to do this. I'm not interested. I'd rather be hanging out with the in spiritual life with the king, with God. I'd rather be in the upper waters. And this complaint of the water is not an invalid complaint. It's a really valid complaint, and it's necessary. It's necessary that those who are living in a material world and have to engage in the material world should have this complaint. God, why do I have to be stuck in this materialism? I understand you want me to do a mission. Okay, I'm going to do it, but do I really have to go through all the drudges of the physicalized world? Therefore, God says, in consolation, you should know that every offering on the altar is going to have a part of you, salt. Salt, which comes from the ocean, is part of every single offering. And this is like God's way of saying, even though you become physicalized and materialized, and it's unpleasant because you'd much rather be hanging out in the spiritual world with me, but the true connection to me, the altar and the offering, the true sacrifice, that comes from you from the lower waters. The spiritual people don't do any sacrifice. They're in bliss land. But the Jew down here, living in the physicalized world, the lower waters, he's got to do offerings, he's got to do sacrifice. That's what offerings are. They're sacrifices. He's got to give up of himself. That's the real connection to Hashem. And that's the salt, represented by the salt on the altar. And that includes every single offering, including the meal offering, as we just learned here. Before it's offered, some salt has got to be added. What are you going to say?
That's parallel to the neshama coming down.
Precisely, but it's exactly parallel to the neshama coming down here. Neshama says, I'm not interested. But Hashem says, your real connection to Hashem, that's going to happen by the sacrifice you make here in this world. It's exactly right. Exactly right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, we'll stop over here. We're going to get more of the process, God willing, tomorrow. And we're going to come back to the site soon enough. God willing, more tomorrow. And all those who are part of this year and are friends of Mordechai Doiv should do an extra mitzvah today in his honor. Give a little tzedakah, learn an extra Mishnah, say an extra Perek Tehillim, do something specifically with the intent of adding to the elevation his neshama deserves and is no doubt getting. Yeah.